What I want to ask, does this feel like old history to any of the four of you? Sometimes I get, we hear out there, it's time to move on, right? It's been 6 whole months, time to move on. Does this feel like old history and time to move on? You can just say yes or no.
No, sir.
Nope.
There can be no moving on without accountability. There can be no healing until we make sure this can't happen again.
I echo that. How do you move on without correcting what happened?
Let me ask you all, one of the narratives out there, and Officer Fanone, it triggered something in your testimony when you said it. So there's been this idea that this was not an armed insurrection, and as if somehow that is justification for what happened. We know the hugs and kisses. We know it was BLM and Antifa, right? Of course, then you would, I'm sure, want to investigate that if that's the case. Now we've heard maybe the FBI actually started this, but one of the ones that has always held was that this was not an armed insurrection. Officer Dunn, you mentioned that those that stormed the Capitol were very well organized and trained, and let me ask you, and I'll ask actually to all four of you, and Officer Hodges, I know this was part of your job initially before you responded to the Capitol. If in the middle of all that melee, you see somebody with a gun in that crowd, would you be able to go out, apprehend, arrest them, read them their rights, and go through that process? Or was the mission at the moment survival and defense of the Capitol? So I'm asking, is it possible that people maybe had guns? And we've seen that actually there were. But this idea that, wow, people weren't arrested with guns, at the time it was raw survival. We can just start on the left. Let me ask you, what's your response to that?
For those people who continue to downplay this violent attack on our democracy and our officers, I suggest them to look at the videos and the footage right now, because common things were used as weapons, like a baseball bat, a hockey stick, a rebar, a flagpole, including the American flag, pepper spray, bear spray. So you name it. You have all these items and things that were thrown at us and used to attack us. Those are weapons. No matter if it is a pen, the way they were using these items, it was to hurt officers. It was to hurt police officers. Their intent was not to say, hey, let me go and find the Republicans or the Democrats in there or the independents. It was every single body that was here in this building, in the Capitol, that their intent was to get them out and hurt them. It would have been a much different outcome had we not stopped them, especially at the lower West Terrace entrance. Even though at that time, we didn't know that that there were other breaches in the Capitol. Our intent was to stop whoever was trying to come in through that door. And those weapons that were used, those were common items. The way they were using it was as weapons.
Let me ask too, in kind of my final moments. Sergeant Cannell, Officer Hodges, you were Virginia Guardsman, I believe, fellow Guardsman.
Yes, sir.
At any time in your service in the military, as you know, I'm an Air Guardsman. And Sergeant Cannell, you specifically mentioned your time in Iraq. At any time in your military service, did you change how you defended the person to your left or right, or how you trained with them based on their political affiliation?
No,
whether it was in war or anything?
No.
No, sir. The way I view it at that time, it was I'm an American, and the person right next to me is an American, and I would do everything possibly for me to defend him and the country at that time.
You guys did that? You guys did that in the blue.
Yes, sir.
And I want to say that is the mission of this committee. We may have our deep differences on other policy issues, but we are all Americans today. And we thank you for holding that line.
Congressman, if I may respond to Congressman when you asked about the armed part, when the officers, assumed officers, showed me their what appeared to be a police badge, I don't know too many police officers, and this is just me being a police officer for 13 years, that carry their badge and don't carry a gun with them. So we look on their hips, you see a print. I didn't see that it was a gun, but a reasonable police officer would believe that that's a gun on their hip. So,
And just to quickly be specific, a print is basically what looks like the outline of a gun.
that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, witnesses.